In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take your clips and bring them into your editing software of choice, in this case Adobe Premiere, and then how to go over basic transitions and color grading in order to get a high quality, high resolution video, and then as well as how to export and optimize it for YouTube and for Instagram. This is part 2 in my series, so if you haven't seen the first part where I go over how to record your gameplay and how to clip it as well, go check out part 1. I'll leave a link in the description down below. And yeah, let's get right into it. One thing that I forgot to mention before we get into Adobe Premiere is that you need to create a new folder for every new project that you start. So we're going to go ahead and call this Project 1. We can close this and then open up Adobe Premiere. Now everything I'm about to show you in Adobe Premiere in terms of editing and transition and effects obviously is for Adobe Premiere, but these effects, you can translate them into any other editing software that you use, whether it be Final Cut or any other free software. What's important here is the export settings that I'll go over, and then whatever transition effects that I use, you can find the same or similar effect in whatever other software you're using. It's still beneficial for you to learn this portion. So you're going to click New Project, and you want to leave your video rendering and playback settings whatever your default settings are. But what's important is you want to change your name here. You can call this Project 1, and then you want to select your location. Click Browse, and let's go to our desktop and find our gameplay videos and then our Project 1 folder. You select the folder and then make sure your capture format is at HDV, and that's it. Click OK, and that's it. It'll load up your editing workspace here. And this is what you'll see before you start editing, okay? So we're gonna shrink that down a little bit and open up our gameplay folder where we have our clips. From here, we're gonna drag and drop our clips in order to import media. Another option you can do is you can just double click this window down here in the bottom, and then you can select wherever your clips are. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag in some more clips. I'm gonna drag in a song as well, because I like to edit to music. I'm going to teach you how to cut and transition to a beat. So pick your song and then get your clips dropped in, and then we'll move forward. Now that we have all of our clips imported into Adobe Premiere, we can finally start editing. If I move too fast, feel free to pause the video at any time and try to keep up. I'm going to be walking you guys through my workflow and then some of the specific settings that you need to have to make sure that your final montage is in the highest possible quality and the highest resolution, and then optimize it for stuff like Instagram versus YouTube. Okay, so some of the things I do here before I even start editing is just kind of change up my workspace a little bit. You can left click and hold to drag some of these windows open and make them bigger. I like to have this at least 3 thumbnails wide. I like to shrink this down because I don't need all that space over here to look at my effects control, and this allows me to get a better preview window. This is where your preview will go. I also like to move this window out a little bit so that way I can monitor my audio levels a little bit better. Okay, so now from here, the first thing you want to do is drop a clip in. Drag a clip over into this timeline so that way you can create your sequence. I'm going to start with this clip right here, and I'm going to pull that over, right? So now we have our timeline created. Once our sequence is created, we go over here in the top left here, click on Sequence and go to Sequence Settings. And your settings, you want to have your editing mode to Custom, your time base to 60 frames per second. Down here you have your videos preview window. Your videos preview window should have these 2 boxes unchecked for the reason that your previews do not need to be like super high quality for you to see what you're working with. You know what I mean? If you have it super high quality, it takes up processing power and it slows down your editing software, and that goes with any editing software, not just Adobe Premiere. Your audio should be just whatever your default settings are. I have mine set at 48,000 hertz and display format is audio samples, and that's it. That's all the settings you need to change. Then click OK, and then click OK. So some tools to familiarize yourself with right now, just this razor blade here. This is the razor tool. The shortcut for that is C, as you can see there, and then this tool right here, which is the selection tool, and the shortcut for that is V. Those are pretty much the 2 primary tools you're going to be using as you're working through your montage. The plus sign makes your timeline bigger, and the minus sign makes your timeline smaller, like so. And then the space bar is just to play your preview. And the next thing I like to do is add my song. I add my songs so that way I can have that already lined up, and then I can sync my clips and my transition and all my effects right to the beat of the music. By looking at this song here, you can see it in the timeline, and these are the little waveforms to indicate the audio levels. And I can already tell by looking at it, it's going to be too loud. And I'll play it for you just so you can get an idea. Okay, all right, that's enough. Way too loud. And if you notice right there on the right-hand side, it peaked, right? It went up into the red. That means it's too loud. It's peaking, and it's going to end up sounding distorted when you export. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click, and then go to Audio Gain, and then put in something like -25. This M here stands for mute, and it will mute whatever track you have selected. So in this case, I'll click mute, so that way it mutes my clip, and then now I can play the song. And this is a much more bearable audio level for my song, right? Another thing I want you to pay attention to is this wave right here. This waveform right here indicates that there is some sort of noise here. And since you have all this kind of like dead space along the line of the audio, I'm going to use the plus sign to get in closer. You have all this dead space here, and then you have this little bump of wave. That indicates the beat drop. Okay, so that's what we're going to be syncing up to as we progress through our montage here. To sync it up, I usually just eyeball it. There are other ways to do it, but again, I'm going to show you my workflow. This is the quickest, easiest way to get this done and then still have it look really good, right? So what I like to do is I like to cut out some of this intro because I don't need all this intro. I want the beat to drop right on the action in the clip, right? So right when I snipe him, let me go ahead and unmute this. Right when I snipe him, pause right there. Bring it back just a couple of frames, and that's where I want the beat to drop. We know that the beat drops right here where this waveform is indicated. Left click and drag trims the clip. So I'm going to go ahead and trim it and then drag it all the way to the beginning here, and then just eyeball and trim off a little bit more so that way I line up the beat drop right with the action of the clip. So we're going to go ahead and play this in preview and see what this looks like.
He just got the shotgun. Oh my god.
One more time.
Shotgun. Oh my god.
Just to let you guys know, man, like once you start editing for a while and you can start making more and more videos, all the songs that you used to love and you use for montages, you will eventually hate. You hear the same songs over and over again, and then you play back all the time just to make sure everything lines up and is synced up. Trust me, you'll end up just getting tired of it. It's okay. It's part of the process. That's welcome to editing. You know what I mean? So anyways, that looks pretty good. The beat is synced up with the action. And then the next step here is to cut this clip where the next beat hits. So that way, when I lay down my next clip, the clip drops right on the beat. And then when we add our transitions in, it's going to look really good. So I'm going to go ahead and play this back and find the next beat.
He just got the shotgun. Oh my.
Okay, so this is where...
God.
So this is where our next beat drop is. I'm going to go ahead and click C or click the razor tool here. And then click right where I want it to cut. Our playhead doesn't be here. You can cut anywhere on the timeline. It doesn't matter. Control Z to undo. And this is where I want the clip to end, right? V to get to my selection tool. Click this, the remainder of the clip here, and then delete. Sometimes it auto saves like that, so that's why that window popped up. But you can click delete, and that gets rid of the rest of the clip. And now we play it back. It should end right where the beat drops.
He just got the shotgun. Oh my god.
See that? Now the next thing to do is to drag your clips onto the timeline one by one. At this point, it's up to you to decide if you want the beat to drop on a transition or you want the beat to drop on the action like we did in the intro. What we're going to do from here is go ahead and lay down all the rest of my clips, line it up with the beat of the music, and then we're going to go back in and add our transitions. All right, now that we're ready for our transitions, we can go up to the top right corner here in the effects panel and type in push. Click and drag push onto our timeline in between our two clips. And then in order to be able to see our effects control in the top left there, you have to make sure that you have clicked on the actual transition itself on the timeline. We're going to make sure that our transition is centered at the cut. And then when we play it back, you can see that it's a bit too slow, and it's also moving from left to right when we wanted it to go from right to left. In order to move it from right to left, all we have to do is click this arrow up here in the effects control panel that says east to west. Next, we're going to shorten our transition by pinching and pulling the actual transition itself and making it smaller. The next step is to add an adjustment layer here on the bottom left, making sure the width and the height matches up with the actual sequence settings that we set earlier. We're going to drag this adjustment layer onto the timeline above our clip. Once we back out, we can adjust the length of the adjustment layer to be only slightly more than the actual length of the transition. After we get that lined up, we will go back to the effects panel here and type in direction. We're going to find the directional blur effect and drag it onto the adjustment layer. Once we drag it onto the adjustment layer, go over to the effects control panel and type in 90 in the direction box. Make sure our playhead is at the beginning of our transition. We're going to toggle on the animation for blur length by clicking the stopwatch icon. That should set our first keyframe at 0. We're going to move over to the middle of the transition and then type in 50 into the box. Next, we will go to the end of the transition and type in 0 in the blur length or click reset parameter. After doing this, we can play it back and you can see the blur length intensifies throughout the transition, and that gives us almost like a smooth, fast panning transition right into our next clip. For our next transition, we're going to type in cross zoom in the effects panel. Drag the cross zoom effect in between our two clips like we did for the last transition. And then when we play it back, we can see that the transition itself is too long. So we're going to shorten it by pulling and pinching the transition into itself and making it smaller. Now you can press Ctrl C on the transition to copy it, and then press Ctrl V to paste it in between all of our clips. Make sure once you paste the transition that you check the alignment and that it says center at cut. And now we're done with our transitions. The next thing to do is to color grade. To do that, you're going to create another adjustment layer and then drag the adjustment layer on top of the timeline. You're going to stretch it out so that way it takes over the entire length of all of our clips. In the effects panel, type in Lumetri color. Drag the Lumetri color effect onto our adjustment layer. Now from here in the Lumetri color settings, it's entirely up to you how you want to edit and color grade your footage. For me, I like to add, a little bit of exposure and contrast. I definitely want to sharpen it up just a little bit to counteract the loss of quality when you're uploading to YouTube and Instagram. And then I usually add a little vibrance for color to bring out some of that color a little bit. The Lumetri color effect is a great effect to use, and then applying it to the adjustment layer over our entire timeline allows our color grade to be consistent over the entire montage. To wrap up the editing, all you have to do now is cut off the leftover bits of our song and we're ready to export. In order to export, you have to have the timeline window selected. Now click on File, Export, Media. When you get your export settings windows, there are a couple things that you have to look at. Your format should be H.264, and your preset should be match source high bitrate. Clicking on output name allows you to select the folder that you want to save your project in, and then you're going to go ahead and rename the project and make sure the save as type is at videofiles.mp4. In the basic video settings, your width and your height should already match your current sequence. If it doesn't, just click on match source. For the rest of your basic video settings, just make sure your frame rate is at 60 and copy anything else that doesn't match up with mine. Make sure you have the render at maximum depth box selected. And then for your bitrate settings, 1 pass is good enough. And then I usually keep my target bitrate at around 30 megabits per second. Make sure the box for use maximum render quality is selected. Make sure you do not have the use previews box selected. And then go down to the source range and change it to entire sequence, and then you're ready to export. Now to export for Instagram, you have to change the frame size in your sequence. So you're gonna go up to sequence and then click on sequence settings. Having a really wide video on Instagram doesn't look good because it's too small on the screen. So all we have to do is change the frame size for our horizontal to match up with our vertical. So in this case, I'll change it from 1920 to 1080 and then click OK. Now I have it in a square resolution, which allows it to take up more screen on your phone. And then we're gonna go ahead and export it the same exact way we did our last project. Once everything comes together, this is what you'll get.
He just got the shotgun.
Oh my god.
He's one shot, dude, literally.
3 left.
Oh, where's my gun? Where's my gun?
Oh, I got blanked.
Sweaty Snipes TV, bro.
All right, so that is it. That's how you edit a montage. Very simple, very basic. I just wanted to show you guys a way to really like step up the quality of your content. The color grading and the transitions will make a world of a difference. And that was a very simple way to sync up your clips with your music. That actually took a lot longer than I expected to kind of like cut everything down and simplify it for you guys. But I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to learn more, I have a couple of suggestions for you. Go watch either one of my recent montages. They're my best work to date. And if you see an effect, if you see a transition or anything at all in my videos that you like and you want to learn how to do, come back and drop a comment or leave a comment in that video, whatever, and then tell me what it is that you want to learn and I'll push it out for the next tutorial. In the meantime, if you learned something, if you liked the video, if you want to see more, if you want to learn more, subscribe, leave a comment, and leave a like. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the support, and yeah, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.